The curriculum isn't just outdated, it simply doesn't consider the needs of every child, in particular children with special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND. There are over 1 million pupils in England with SEND, 80% of whom are at risk of missing out on the support they so desperately need because of overstretched mainstream schools that are under financial pressure. Christine McGuinness is a public figure and the mother to 3 autistic children. She is also an author and ambassador for a charity that helps families access autism services. I wanted to speak to Christine about being a mother to 3 autistic children and the challenges she faced finding them the right education.
What was the specific moment or the behaviours or the catalyst that said, I'm going to go and take my children and I'm going to get my children assessed for autism?
It's got to the point where I was struggling massively and I was turning down invitations for play dates for them because they were struggling going out and about, they were struggling in busy places, they were struggling to be around other children, they weren't communicating. I just knew that I needed to do something about it, so I got in touch with a speech and language therapist, and that led down the line to then having sensory support, and eventually they were diagnosed as being autistic.
How difficult was that for you? Looking at children, you're comparing them to other children out there and thinking, well, what happened then? That must have been very stressful.
The panic for me of choosing the right school, trying to find somewhere that would support them and that would understand them, to help them thrive. I felt a lot of pressure. I looked at 12 different schools before I picked the one that they still attend now.
And how did you make the decision as to whether they were mainstream school or a special needs school? How did you think about that?
I looked at mainstream, I looked at private, independent schools, I looked at SEND schools. I picked the one that I felt was right for them because it was small, because it had a good mix of children with and without additional needs. There was other autistic children there and there was those without, and I could see that other children there were being well supported. You know, they need to be taught the language of life. That's what my children need. Whether it's relationships, friendships, or, you know, just going out and about, going to a shop, learning how to just buy a loaf of bread, things like that. I need them to be taught how to be independent little adults one day. I want them to understand their vulnerabilities so that they're not taken advantage of.
So just talk to me about the vulnerability.
The vulnerabilities with autistic children is not being able to read others so well, or getting confused in what people's intentions are, and kind of thinking that, you know, somebody might be your friend and they're not. Some children may take advantage of them knowing that they don't think like others. So that for a parent is quite scary.
People around them are taking advantage. What does that look like?
My closest friend, her son is autistic, he attends mainstream and he's very happy there, but he does struggle to make friends. There was a group of children that approached him with this really exciting bottle of Prime that is all the rage at the minute, and all teenagers want this bottle of Prime. And yeah, he's gone home and emptied out his Christmas savings of £70. Didn't even have Prime in it. It was lemonade, and he's paid a lot of money for what was a bottle of lemonade just to try and be accepted. I think parents have got a part to play, and it's up to them to teach the children not to do that. I think schools need to be more aware of what's going on in the playground, and yeah, the autistic children themselves are going to have to learn somehow, you know, not to try and people please.
Is that an environment which just makes it a lot more difficult for people to accept because they're in such a small minority?
Yeah, definitely. You're fighting for support. You know that your child is more than likely going to get lost amongst all of those children. Their needs may not be met, but not everybody's got a choice. There's catchment areas and not everybody can afford to move house or, you know, get close to a school that may be more suitable for their child. The only option we've got right now is to work with the schools that are there, because families can't just up and move all the time.
If you're talking to the Education Minister, what would you be saying to him?
We need more SEND schools. And I know that's a lot. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of funding, but it's possible and it should be done, because there are children and teenagers all over our country that are not reaching their full potential, that are not being supported, that are not being included because they have not got the places there available. That is something that needs to happen. And it's a massive shame, because the potential in autistic children, the qualities that they've got, their intelligence, their passions, their focus, when they find a focus on what they're passionate about, is something you're not going to find in anybody else. They can really thrive if they're supported in doing things that they really truly care about.
Christine's concerns are backed up by the statistics. The National Education Union has said that SEND funding faces a £2 billion annual shortfall. This means inadequate provision, children educated in inappropriate settings, and over 1,000 children not receiving any education at all. So what difference does a SEND school make to the life of one of their pupils? To find out, I'm on my way to talk with the principal of an independent specialist school in Hanley, one of a number of schools that make up the Aurora Group, which became part of the Octopus family in 2015. Tracy, how are you?
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good to see you again.
Come in.
Thanks, Tracy, for meeting me. So what's the big difference between a special school and mainstream school?
I think for us, we are different initially in how we come across. So all my staff are known by their first name.
Yeah.
I don't have a uniform. We don't do homework, because for young people with autism, there was a barrier between home and school. So we've broken down all the barriers that actually mean that education's a bit fearful. Because we've got a really great clinical integrated support here with our speech and language, occupational therapy, because we can develop those relationships. Once the young people start to feel safe and listened to, their anxiety levels reduce, which is really good to see.
I was talking to Christine McGuinness, who has 3 children with autism, and she told a really upsetting story, which she said there was a child with autism in mainstream education and he'd been taken advantage of. How do you help children with, I guess, the life struggles that are coming their way as they seek independence, as they get older, as they move into society? How do you teach that?
I think our young people really struggle to negotiate who's a friend, who's not a friend. When they're being taken advantage of, it's something really struggle with. And I've heard very similar stories from our young people. Over the course of your years with us, we take away all the weak areas by providing quite unique opportunities to build your self-esteem and your confidence and your social understanding. So hopefully by the time you leave, you've got a significant amount of resilience.
If mainstream education, if the balance was 95% traditional syllabus and 5% life skills, what does it look like in a special school?
So we offer like a functional skills pathway, so it's the proper functional use of maths and of English, Prince's Trust, of enterprise, of travel training, being able to get on a bus safely, being able to budget, being able to cook your food. So actually we're at least promoting and supporting our young people to be independent, if not semi-independent, within their own environment.
Give us an idea of, in the UK, children with special needs, is the schooling system and education system set up to serve them properly?
High schools try incredibly hard, and actually if I'm one child in a class of 30, the 29 are going to take precedent. I think high schools try incredibly hard to be all-inclusive. That's really difficult when you have so many needs and so many things you have to put in place, but just by the very nature of the building, you can't meet some of those child needs.
If I'm the father of a child with special needs and I'm thinking about taking them out of mainstream education, putting them into a special needs school, how would I start? What's the process look like?
Well, if you've got an educational healthcare plan, that's a great start, because that gives you the power to get into a school. If you haven't, then there's a whole process prior to that to ensure that the needs of your child are recognised. That can sometimes take 12 months. When you've got that plan, when you say, right, I think my child needs to go to an SEN school, you've then got to find the school, you've got to visit the school, you've got to then propose the school to the local authority and hope that they agree with you. That's very long-winded, can take a while, you've got to navigate that, and you've got to ensure that the school you want your child to go to actually agrees it's the right place as well. All the time you've maybe got a child that is out of education.
So if you could change the education system for children with special needs, what one thing would you do?
I think I'd create almost a second pathway of schools that provide that inherent life skills, community, opportunity, that social awareness that doesn't sit within that really tight academic curriculum. So I think we've got a lot of really great entrepreneurs within our system, you know, a lot of creative young people whose skills are not captured within the normal education systems.
If we created that second pathway of schools for children with special needs, how much larger do you think it could be or should be?
I would imagine a quarter of most high schools have young people that should be on life skills, real life learning pathways. You know, like you say, you can have a GCSE and you can have an A-level English, and I say to the young people here, what's the point if you can't go into Costa, work out your change and order the coffee in the first place?
You know, if you tried to list down the real skills of the children that come to Hanley, how would you describe them?
For example, I've got a young person who can build a computer from scratch. Now, we don't have, you know, he can do that, it's great. I've got a young person, we got them through astronomy because we could be creative with our curriculum, playing the piano. But, you know, to be fair, all of that is amazing, but if they can just be happy and feel okay with themselves and, you know, feel positive, that is absolutely the most important thing.
Yeah. What this school is doing is incredible. They're building a syllabus around their pupils, and in the process these children are engaging with learning and enjoying school life. Unfortunately, it's clear this just wouldn't be possible in mainstream education. To really understand the gravity of this, I'm about to meet one of the pupils here, Callum, a 19-year-old who I'm told really struggled in mainstream education before arriving here in May last year.
So which one of these is going to go on your x-axis?
Time, yeah.
Time, yeah, so that's going up in equal increments, so that's going to go on your x-axis, and then your volume's going to go on your y-axis. Yeah?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How long have you been here, Callum?
Coming up on a year.
If I said you got one word to describe Hanley, which word would you use?
Brilliant.
Brilliant, really? Why'd you say that?
It's just like general, like really good, like in basically every aspect. Yeah,
Really?
I can't think of a really single negative thing about it.
And how's it different to the college you were at before you came to Hanley?
It's a lot more like relaxed, you know, like it's more like flexible. Like staff are more willing to meet students like halfway. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you're thinking about your future, let's like jump forward a few years and you're leaving Hanley and you're going, what do you think you're going to go off to do?
I'm not really sure, but I think I'll go into, you know, definitely further education in some kind of field, but I'm not really sure at the moment.
To listen to somebody talk about their school like that, whether it's a special school or a mainstream school, genuinely remarkable. I'm hoping to meet Callum's mum, to hear from her what the impact of Callum coming to Hanley has had on him, on her and the rest of her family. I've been really fortunate today. I've spent the afternoon at Hanley and I was in one of the science classes and the teacher introduced me to your son, to Callum. I talked to him for 5-10 minutes, but he seems like a child that loves learning. So he is, I mean, you see him in the science class, he's really smart, he loves learning, he's quite cheeky. But I'd love to hear your story. And if you take us all the way back to the beginning.
He was fine all through junior school, I would say, and his trouble started, I would say, within 8 weeks of being at mainstream high school. If he'd jovial, he'd come out to school and he'd say, have you had a good day, Mum? And I'd say, yeah, how was your day? And he'd talk about his day. Then skipping forward a good few months, it would be, I don't want to go. Then it would go to, he would self-harm. I'd seen his diary one day, and from Monday to Sunday he wrote suicide.
God.
So that's where the tears are coming from, because then it would be, I don't want to be here. Please don't make me go to school. I can't do it, Mum. So I'm having to take his drawstring out of his dressing gown. And at one point he was using his square ruler and he'd cut the nib off to cut himself. Because as a mum, me had screaming, take that out the room, that's what he's cutting himself with. Or do I leave that there because at least I know he's cutting himself with that and he's not going to cut himself with a knife or something.
Oh my God.
So mistreated him, I think, the high school did that he went to, that it was for a good 6 months they drove him to the point that he could only see suicide and self-harming as a way out. Callum won't be the only one in that system.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of kids in that school that have been failed.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of them won't get the help that Callum's got. They won't be coming to a school like this and they'll be able to get their education and flourish. This school has been a lifesaver for Callum, I would say, because I don't know where he could have accessed his education comfortably.
Yeah. When you think about his future and what he's going to do, maybe as a consequence of Hanley, but him kind of flourishing, how do you think about that future now? What do you think he's going to do?
Whatever he wants to do, I'm happy with. But I'm sure if he put his mind to it, he can achieve it. So I think the school has made him realise that yes, it's okay to be individual. Yes, it's okay to be different.
Today has amplified my appreciation and empathy for children with SEND and their families. I knew there was a problem, I just didn't realise how big it was. Christine looked at 12 schools before she found one she felt comfortable with, but many families just don't have that luxury. What Sonia and her family have been through trying to get Callum out of his mainstream school was horrific. Meant he missed 2 years of education, exiled by a system that just can't cope with the demand. I'm aware that the Department for Education plans aim to improve this system, and earlier diagnoses are part of the reforms, as well as a commitment to build 33 more special needs schools, just like Aurora's. But we can and we should be doing more. Companies like the Aurora Group are proving that with the right mindset, businesses can start to address these problems. In the process, they can create meaningful change, positively impacting the lives of thousands of children and their families.